Hello, everybody. Welcome. If you can hear me, please leave a reply in the comment section. We're going to start in a couple minutes. All right, let's get started. TSLA is up 0.7%. Overall markets are up about 1% today on the back of CPI report. Any questions, comments, please request to speak. Tesla up 0.7%, $179 per share. Markets are up. Dow Jones 0.7, Nasdaq 1.4, S&P 500 1%. Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Google are all up today. Utilities are down. Real estate is down, likely due to rising yield curve, up a few basis points today. After the inflation report surprised upward, core CPI came in slightly higher than expected at 0.4%. Expected figure was 0.3%. According to Reuters article, gasoline shelter costs boosted the US prices. Inflation is still slowing. Consumer prices increased 0.4% in February. Gasoline shelter account for over 60% of the rise in CPI. Core CPI gained 0.4%, up 3.8% on a year-over-year basis. Markets interpreted this as a rise in core inflation. Let's bring in machine. With six, how are you?
Hey, Yaman, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me up. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I probably need about 20 seconds. I apologize. Can I just let you know in just a moment. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, be right back. Thank you.
Machine, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Oh wow, that's great sound quality. What's going on?
Well, the laptop again, and I don't know, I'm in a bedroom. Maybe that has better sound quality.
You didn't go to work today? Why are you being lazy?
My work is at home. I am working. When I finish talking to you, I'll actually be more effective, and yeah, get back to work. You need to get back. You've gotten back to work the past few weeks. Actually, moving on to providing some analysis on other topics, and I think it's good for you, good for the space, and good for your brain.
All right. Are you on YouTube at the same time? Can you check the sound quality on there? Is anybody on YouTube right now?
I
If
was
you
on there
are,
for a
yeah,
second before. I thought it sounded fine to me.
is the
What
sound fine?
what I
Okay,
heard.
good.
I mean, except for the fact that you have a horrible accent, but we can't really do anything about that.
Been working on my diction. But anyway, what did you think of the CPI report?
Thought it was okay. Mostly more of the same. I finally spent a little more time, which I haven't in quite a while, looking a bit at the monthly and yearly data and how things are trending. And the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, which provides the CPI report now, it has an ability to generate graphs, so I don't have to pull everything in by myself and process them. If I wanted to do some filtering, I would, but I just started looking at all their graphs for all these subcategories over the last 10 years. And if I just look through this, and nothing I will say is, I guess, that surprising, but if I look through each component, most of them you can see a massive inflation phase and rise in the index in 2021, 2022, and then correct most of last year, and this year just being a continuation of that. And so for most of the metrics, you say, okay, everything's nice and steady. But there are a few that aren't the case. And these are the obvious ones. One is, I'm trying to look through it, transport, of course, being the one that's down. The purchasing of new vehicles and used vehicles is down, right? You have deflation in those two categories. Um, but then there are ones that are sustaining a bit higher than they have historically. Obviously, as you mentioned, housing seems to be sticky in the sense that it's staying elevated in terms of its inflation rate. I don't know exactly what their calculation is again between homeowners and renters, but we've validated through Trueflation as well that I think, especially the homeowner index, single family homes are staying high year over year. Um, there are some other areas such as hospital services and other service industries, especially food, takeout, dining out, that are also remaining high. So their inflation rate is still above the norm. So I think those are kind of the main categories up are, oh, and electricity rates, which I blame California probably mostly, are
Hold on,
inflating higher
hold
than
on
ever.
1 second. Hold on 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little muffled now,
Okay,
but
so you can hear me, but the audience can't hear you.
oh, they can't hear me?
Yeah, some people can't hear you. And when I look at my screen, I don't see as a speaker, even though I can hear you. Omar just joined. I think there we go. Let's see if this works. Omar, how are you?
Hey, doing great. I'm really excited to see 12.3 starting to roll out.
Yeah, let me see if I can get this machine thing working again. But why don't you tell us about 12.3 in the meantime?
Well, I don't have it yet, but Elon says it should be a pretty major upgrade. He said, it's more than sort of the point release would suggest. It's a bigger jump than really 12.2 to 12.3. That kind of suggests to me that maybe there's some more major architectural changes that are shipping with this build.
There's been a couple of videos, right? What did you think of the videos so far?
They look pretty great. One person, I think Tesla AI girl, uploaded a video with some roundabouts. It was just smooth, a lot less hesitation. I've been seeing pretty great performance from 12.2, but the one thing that's just been kind of smooth, a lot less, but I'm hoping that 12.3 addresses this and, um, you know, is just sort of more of the feel of 12.1, which I think would just be exceptional. If everything goes well with this, then this should be the version that goes to wide release and replaces 11 on the majority of cars in North America. So, could be the moment we're waiting for. Still very early in the rollout. I don't even have it yet, but I expect that in the coming days, you'll see it go out to all the early access testers. I expect we'll see them send this one out to Chuck. We have been seeing them test on Chuck Street a lot. And yeah, I think everyone's going to love it when they experience 12 for the first time.
Great, thank you. West 6, how are you?
Hey, doing great, Yaman. I thought I had an issue, but I guess I just couldn't hear machine, so that's why I was rebooting and stuff. Um, I'm crazy excited, to be honest. I am curious though. We don't know at this point. 12.3 is wide release. Is that right, Omar?
Well, I mean, it hasn't been released widely yet, but I believe the intention will be to wide release it if it is ready.
Well, Omar, you made my day yesterday. Um, I have told you guys before I ordered a Cybertruck, but I went so fast ordering the Cyber Beast that I didn't see that the expectation was for summer or late this year. And so last night when I saw your post about the early Cybertruck delivery for long-term shareholders, I couldn't believe it. I absolutely fell out of my chair. I've been a long-term shareholder, so it works perfect for me. So I went from, kind of frustrated with myself for not paying attention to like I'm on cloud nine. I couldn't really sleep much last night. So excited to get the Cybertruck hopefully soon.
Meta, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing? I wanted to share a quick thought on the release, if you have a moment.
Yes,
So
please.
I think I've been reflecting on this. I think it'll be interesting to see if we see more releases that are sharded so that they're not sending the releases to all of the beta testers. That would make sense in the early days and quite possibly also continue to make sense later on because oftentimes with AI models, you try different experiments and the only way to really know if it's working is to test it in production with some production traffic. So they might as well continue doing this and then at some point when they go wide, they can pick, the parts of 12.2 and 12.1 and 12.3 that's best and move forward with that. Because AI is a lot harder to understand than like when they were doing heuristics.
What do you guys think of the 12.3 comments from Elon saying this should be more like V3, V13?
I mean, you might as well call it banana. It doesn't really make any difference.
While I have both of you guys on the speaker board, Omar and Meta, what do you think of the X's plans to open up Grok, open source the code? Meta?
I can take it first. I think there's certain things that make sense to open source. I'm curious to see what they will open source. Um, I know that there are a few open source models, right? Like you have Gemma and Llama and all those out there. My personal opinion is there are parts of the model that should be open source, like the safety training, that all that kind of stuff that's being done. However, the challenge is if you do release all that and you release the model, then somebody can very easily remove all that. So it's kind of like handing out a loaded gun and not making sure that people you hand the gun to know how to use it properly. I think there's some ethical concerns in my personal opinion, in just releasing models vanilla that are very powerful to everybody in the world, because the lowest common denominator could do something bad with it. And there's no putting him back.
Omar, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I think open models are great. Um, it's definitely sort of a differentiator when it comes to some of the closed source models. Obviously, they're not going to actually be releasing the source code or the training data, but they'll probably just be releasing the model weights essentially so others can inference them. And this should open the door to Tesla or others even using them free of cost potentially. It'll be interesting to see what the licensing is on the model once they release it, whether it's free for commercial use or only for, non-commercial use. But I think it's a great move by the Grok team. I expect them to continue iterating on the model quite a bit. So it'll be great to be able to download Grok and run it on my own computer without having to pay for anything.
Meta, do you agree with that?
I think if they only release the model weights, the folks in the AI community that feel like that's not open source are going to say the same thing. That's not open source. That's more of a, you know, license free release. As you would say in regular software, it's like you have a license to do whatever you want with the software, but you don't have the right to modify the software. Or you have the right to modify the software, but you don't have the right to modify it for commercial use. There's all these different like levels of access restrictions you can provide. Open source usually means you can modify it and use it however you wish. I don't think that's where we're going to go though. It'd be strange if Grok
Yeah.
did.
I mean, a lot of people have been using the term open source for these models when they release the weights when they're not really open source at all in the traditional sense. You don't actually have the source code. But a lot of people have been sort of misapplying that. Um, you could maybe call them open versus closed models where, the releases are published on Hugging Face or something like that, as opposed to the models where there is no release of the weights. So, I mean, I would be very surprised if they released the source code or the training data set. I mean, I suppose they could release some of the source code, but I think that when they say open source, they're probably just going to release the model weights, much like Gemma or Llama or Mistral or any of the other open models, which release the weights but not the source code.
Yeah, I think that should be called open model. Because, like, if you look at GPT-2, for example, the code is completely available, which is a very different situation. And that's a good foundation space from which all these other models have been built.
Yeah, I agree. The term open source is not really appropriate for open model weights, but yeah, I would maybe use open model versus closed model rather than open source.
Yeah, and I think that's where, there's that nuance of when Elon was agreeing that the libraries and things maybe don't need to be open, but the models should be available to all. That's a different situation. Now, for me personally, the other part is if the models are so expensive to run, right? Like I've been following different groups that are making GPUs available. One of the largest, or I think it's one of the largest crypto groups that's like allowing decentralized GPU access, etc. I asked them how many GPUs they had, and they only had 64 H100s. So there's not a large pool of like inference and training compute that's just readily available out there. So if it's not out there and you're gonna have to use a cloud provider anyway, and you're not gonna have it in your own data center, what difference does it make if you're accessing it via an API or if you're loading the model through an API and then accessing it through an API anyway? You don't have much control over it. The part that is interesting to open source, in my opinion, is just like with X, open sourcing your safety rules. As long as, and this is the risk, right? The same thing with the newsfeed algorithm. It does subject you to hackers and folks trying to like abuse the system, but it also allows white hat hackers to then, mitigate those approaches. And it speeds up the whole process of getting to where you want to be at the end.
Anything else on this topic?
Do you want to place a coffee bet on when this actually comes out?
What's your prediction?
More than 2 weeks.
By 6?
Yeah, I watched a video on this topic in terms of open source AI about 3 or 4 days ago that was really informative. It was before Elon announced that they were going to open source. I'll try to find it and post it in replies. But I also have a question too, if I can ask Omar and Meta some. I guess Omar's
Go
gone.
ahead, ask your question.
So I guess Omar's gone, but Meta and Yaman, maybe you can add to this. Or I don't know if you can. But I'm kind of wondering about the architecture of FSD in the future. I realize we replaced the majority of C, C++ with, with AI, if you will. But it seems like there's got to be some software that's, written by human beings that still kind of creates this, the rules, if you will. For example, like in the future, when we have robotaxi, let's say that, the car pulls up to the front of a building to pick someone up and they don't come out. Let's say they put a rule in that says we wait 5 minutes and then we cancel and we go somewhere else. That's not going to be learned through data training. That would only be learned through, hey, we're applying some rules here. And so I was just kind of curious what everybody's thoughts were regarding, is it accurate that that's going to be the case, or always will be some kind of, handwritten code, if you will? And what does that look like?
So it's a yes and no answer here. Yes, those rules will always be written by humans. No, it's not impossible for it to be learned by a model. You can write handwritten rules for the dopamine reward system or neuron reward system, whatever you want to call it, for the model training, and keep that in the cloud. So you keep that in your training dojo. So you reward models that cancel after 5 minutes, but not before 5 minutes. This allows a little more nuance than just a straight heuristic, which you could also do in the vehicle, because you might want to say, oh, but if you see them coming, don't drive away. Whereas like a robot would be like, oh, I see them coming and I'm still going to drive away. Or, the person sends a message, it can interpret the message and make a judgment call based on how much other demand there is on the system, etc. If you want it someday to be able to make this complex decision making and use neurons instead of heuristics, I would say heuristics would be kind of a crutch to get there. It's probably an acceptable crutch to use, but it would be a bit of a crutch along the way. But you don't need to run it in the vehicle.
Interesting points. Thank you.
There's also another thing here, which is you want photon to controls for the critical path, but that doesn't mean that they can't have, because I think people are going to harp on this in the future. It doesn't mean that they can't have some heuristics running in the car as long as they're running asynchronously and they're not in the critical path. So you can have something running at a slower pace, and when it makes a decision, it sends an input flag up that says, "Hey, I've gotten it's been too long." When this bit is enabled, then the model goes, "Oh, it's time to start driving." Something along those lines.
So you could see a scenario where it's learning, even though it has heuristics plugged in to create rules, create rules, if you will, for robotaxi. And then over time, it can optimize beyond the heuristics. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, let me see if I can describe it a different way. You want to remove heuristics from the vision, planning, and controls, because that's the critical path. It doesn't mean no heuristics in the system altogether. You can have heuristics that are asynchronously running alongside it. It's like having two drivers in the car. One driver's fully AI and it's actually the driver. And you have another person sitting there with like a phone dealing with the scheduling and all that kind of stuff. And every now and then they tell the driver what they want. but the driver still makes decisions based on safety.
But those heuristics would probably remain long term as opposed to AI kind of figuring out how to also optimize the
Safety. The speed heuristics.
Thanks.
Like you can't force people to take the easiest steps along the way, right? Some people just want to go all the way to the end, and that takes longer to get to sometimes. Um, it sometimes it takes less time. It's kind of a difficult thing to gauge sometimes.
Well, I think the software for the robotaxi network is under discussed in general. And I think it's fascinating, but it's also a tell for how close we are for getting to the network. For example, right now, FSD 12 is parking itself, or in some situations, and I see that as an example of, hey, we're kind of getting there. But in terms of, you know, they're in the car now. Let's lock the doors. Let's take off. Let's charge the card, the credit card, all those things. I think it's going to be. I think it's really interesting, and I'm curious where they are right now with that software, or if they've delayed even getting to it. Perhaps it's easy. Perhaps it's they don't have the engineering bandwidth. But I'm very interested in learning more about the robotaxi software.
So there's parts that already exist, right? When you go to the charging stations and it automatically charges your card, it already has a sense of that. Now, if they could make it where, depending on your phone of who's driving and using Bluetooth connection to the vehicle, it charges you as opposed to the owner of the vehicle. These are the kinds of things I would maybe look for if I was doing this in an incremental way to get yourself closer to robotaxi. Based on the fact that these kinds of things aren't happening, I don't really see a lot of actual engineering time being dedicated to the Uber side of things quite yet. So my prediction is that they're going to have FSD for owners for quite a while before they have robotaxi launch, and by quite a while I mean like maybe a couple quarters.
Right on. Thank you.
How'd you come up with that couple quarters estimate?
Estimating the amount of work that would be required to build the code, like with a
Do
team
you
of
think
maybe 10 to 20.
Uber takes a couple quarters to build?
Not Uber, because there's a lot of like network effects, launching things. So if we're removing all that and we're just talking about the code, yeah. Keep in mind, like there's a lot of work that goes into Uber that is not immediately obvious. Like Uber does by the block surge pricing. That's requires AI and things like that. You don't have to have that on day one, but that stuff is not being included in my estimate.
West6, are you on YouTube Live as well?
I'm not. I was at the beginning and it sounded great, but I'm not on now. You may check it out.
Yeah. Can you just kind of check out and let me know?
Yeah,
Meta, in
sure
the
can.
meantime, yeah, interesting. Optimus kind of fell off the radar, like in terms of discussions on Tesla. No one's talking about it.
I mean,
Nobody on X, nobody on Seeking Alpha, nobody anywhere I see. Like literally anybody I know of that follows Tesla is not talking about Optimus.
most people don't have like long distance vision for these kinds of things, and I think until FSD is done, they don't even want to consider it. They'd rather talk about the other companies doing demos and things like that. It also seems, in my personal opinion, from people who don't understand the manufacturing difficulties of this, it seems like there's a lot of competitors in a similar space. Some people might look at Boston Robotics and be like, "Oh, okay," or Boston Dynamics and be like, "They're ahead," etc. So I think the gap, the percentage of the population that is technically literate enough to appreciate it is very low, and the intersection of that and the investment community is probably even lower. So it just, I I think knowing too much makes it harder to know what the market's going to do. That's my self justification, maybe.
I mean, do you see it as a very far away project?
No,
Didn't Elon say like late 2025 they're going to start delivering them?
I don't know if he said start delivering them. That's pretty ambitious if that's what he said. But I could see them start using them in mass use cases internally, at least.
How long do you think it's going to take to deliver them after using them internally?
Well, maybe a couple of years, 3 years. That's a harder one to answer because it's about people being comfortable with the robot in their house. I saw some ideas from there's a startup or something that I think it was Robert Scoble who posted a video of it, but they made a smaller version. The Optimus is about 5 feet. I could imagine if you had like a 3 foot or 4 foot one, maybe that would be more popular. It can't reach up to counters and stuff, so maybe that's not the right height. So obviously Tesla's thought about these things, but there is a certain amount of make it not intimidating, make it easy for people to feel like it's okay to have in their house, and then maybe go out to restaurants first, go to like corporations first, and that's where people start feeling more comfortable. But there is this real eerie thing that's going to happen where people are going to feel anger towards the robots for taking jobs that their friends or family or they themselves had. So that's the reason why I'm more hesitant about how long it's going to take to get out there.
Where 6?
Yeah, I'm also worried about the brand, the impact on the brand when a lot of people get angry because I have that same concern. Is it going to be, man, Tesla's taking all our jobs, right? And then I hate Tesla.
I think if FSD is everywhere, if EVs are everywhere, electricity costs come down. Those things need to happen first for like food prices to come down and all these like, transportation as part of everything you buy to come down. And for people to feel richer, and then maybe the world starts being more accepting of robots. I think we're jumping it too far too fast because we can see the technical roadmap, but we're forgetting the human side of it, the equation sometimes. It's the equivalent of when Google came out with those Google Glass lenses. The world was not ready for that. Now, when Apple's out with it, I don't think the world's that ready for it, but they're more accepting of it. I remember hearing this from a friend of mine who's in fashion. If I can give a quick and
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Basically, I remember hearing this from a friend of mine who's in fashion. If I can give a quick and
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Basically, they were like, but had they not done the crazy outlandish thing, the smaller thing wouldn't have seemed acceptable. I think that's kind of also happening with technology. You have to show people like the crazy possible future, and they go, "Well, that's too crazy for me to accept, but I could accept it in restaurants, or maybe I can accept it in this, in garbage truck workers being replaced or what have you, but not replacing, my job specifically."
I'm trying to bring Machine up here, but my phone sees Machine as a listener. He sees himself as a co-host, and my macro analyst co-host doesn't see Machine at all.
Machine, I think you have to kill the app and reopen it.
It's tried a bunch of different things. It's just not working. It's fucking ridiculous. Oh, go ahead.
I think we just all have to rage against the machine. My joke fell flat. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I'm just so frustrated with this stuff. Ridiculous. Anyway, like I can't focus on the conversation this well. Like I have no idea what's conversation
Yeah.
going on. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
That's stupid.
I'm going to give some criticism to Tesla here at the risk of being skewed if I can. If
Go
they
ahead.
can't get like Tesla's demonstrated client side development chops. If they can't get server side development chops to show, I know X is different, but like to show server side expertise, they're going to have to go out there and acquire or hire people. And that's going to be difficult given their current reputation. Like server side engineers are harder to get, I think, than client side engineers because client side engineers tend to come from like gaming industries, firmware, areas where there's already not super cushy working conditions. So I think I think it could be a challenge. Now, there's a lot of like people that work in startups. There's like layoffs that have happened a lot. So I think Tesla should be trying to recruit people and building out the robotaxi stuff now. I just haven't seen any job listings or any discussions about that lately.
Is that you adjusting your estimates for your predictions?
My prediction was about L4, never about robotaxi.
Fair. So are you holding on to your spring for L4?
Yes. Look at 12.4, 12.3. I think even if machine won't accept it, like more than Omar, many people are already saying they're able to do curb to curb without supervision. They are in the car and the car is watching them. I get that, but we said no regulation requirements. So the regulatory reasons are the reason why they're having to be supervised. But like the more people have that experience, we're getting close. Now it's just a question of like, what is the definition of good enough here?
You are not even close to winning this bet. Like, let's be real here. Come on.
Okay, so you don't think that Tesla on V12 can drive from curb to curb unsupervised today?
Not consistently enough for you to win this bet. Not even close.
All right. What is the definition in your opinion of what percentage of rides that people have to experience?
First of all, it has to be in wide release, which obviously is not. Secondly, we have to have, let's say, hundreds of videos on YouTube.
It was
showing
10. When we discussed it, it was 10. Now it's become hundreds.
No, it basically has to be you can't find an intervention on YouTube. Like I know machine can't join here and you kind of have the speaker board to yourself right now, but I'm not gonna allow you to kind of just like,
Do,
you know,
do you
steal the
recall
show.
do you recall Machine saying that if we saw 10 videos from people other than Omar, he would have accepted it at the time when we were
No,
making the bet?
no, I don't
Okay.
recall that at all. No.
We're gonna have to go find the recording of when we made the bet, clearly, before this bet gets resolved.
It basically has to be like a regular average Tesla owner, not experienced intervention. Let's say like not expecting to experience an intervention.
All right, let's see where we are in a month.
You're not even close, man. Like, are you serious right now?
Do you think V12 and V11 are the same? Or do you think people on V12 are posting incorrect information about feeling like they're having many, many zero intervention trips?
Yeah, I think a lot of the posts are coming from people who just haven't experienced V11.4.9, and there's definitely a bit of a kind of like bullishness to it, like a bias to it.
Did you see the post from Brad about how 96% of 100 roundabouts he did required zero intervention?
Yeah, and that's not even close to you winning the bet.
So 96% is not high enough.
What's the definition of 96%? Did you just go through a couple of roundabouts 100 times?
Yeah, he went through roundabouts 100 times, and 96% of the time he didn't have to do anything. And of the remainder times, he had to like do accelerated presses.
He went through 100 different roundabouts. Is that what you're claiming?
That's what he said.
Okay. First of all, I don't think there are any 100 roundabouts in Texas. I know he's doing a road trip and stuff. Come on, man. All right. If you're not going to get real, we're going to change topics.
I'll find his post.
Okay.
Sorry, it was 50, not 100. Sending it
What
to
does the post say? Machine, can you talk?
I still saw him as a listener.
Wessex?
Yeah, Matt, I was just curious, have you been in 12?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
One trip.
Correct. One of the early trips that was really messed up, but I've been watching the videos.
Yeah, machine is having a difficulty here.
All right. Well, he said he did 50 roundabouts on V12. 48 of them were fine. one required a accelerated press, and one was a critical disengagement.
And you think you're gonna win the bet by next month?
What's the exact date of the month of the bet? Isn't it May something?
I don't think, like, I'll give you 3 months.
Sure, you can give me 3 more months if you want to take the other side of the bet.
Yeah, of course. I'll take that. I think
Well,
he's able
we're
to
gonna
join now.
need
Hold on,
we're gonna need to
hold on.
define it
We're so
way
we're
more
so
clearly. Though.
we're so close. I'll define it however you want, man. Is machine here?
Oh my god. Can you hear me?
Oh my god, it worked, yes. But I see us requesting to speak right now and you can't speak. It's so fucking weird.
You know,
I still see him as a listener.
Can you hear him?
No,
I can hear him. This is so fucking weird.
Wes, can you hear him? Because I can just drop and come back.
No, I cannot hear him.
Oh my god, I'm the only person who paid machine.
You have the exclusive pleasure of just listening to Machine.
This is so funny, and I'm listening to him. I'm listening.
What's
to him,
hilarious is
complain.
Machine really wants to refute me really badly right now.
I know, and rightfully so because they're full of shit.
And X has decided he doesn't have the right to speak.
It's it's so funny.
He's probably like restarting his whole phone right now, or going out to buy a new iPhone just to get on Spaces. He was at Popeyes and he ran around to go get proper Wi-Fi. Maybe.
Okay. So how do you want to define the bets? I'll let you define it however you want.
I mean, however I define it, you're going to move the bar, so I'd rather you define it.
You can't find a disengagement on YouTube.
That is 100%. That is a 100% bar. That is a terrible bar. I would not agree to that.
There's no such thing as a 99% level 4, buddy.
That is the definition of level 4. Is the fact that if
No, it's not.
it,
No.
it is able to inform you before it goes on the trip whether or not it can complete the trip, and it is able to disengage from the trip without like safety issues when it is unable to complete the trip. Disengagements and safety critical disengagements are not the same.
Yeah, there's no safety critical disengagements on level 4.
That's not true.
It's true. In level 4, you can sleep, which requires no safety critical disengagements.
So the way Waymo and Cruise got around that was by having remote operators monitor the vehicle. So as long as the vehicle can say, hey, the situation that I'm in, what's coming up, I'm not okay with, and the response time of the remote operator or the person behind the vehicle, wheel, in the case of Tesla, is required to step in and take over, and it's a sufficient amount of time, and it always can give you the exact amount of time, that would be L4.
Not even close. You're moving the goalposts so much that I'm losing respect at this point.
I think the problem with this bet was when we made this bet, I assumed everybody could read the SAE L4 description.
Machine. Can you talk some sense into this guy?
Is he making excuses for why he's going to lose?
Can you hear Machine right now?
I cannot.
Oh my god, I can't hear him. He's saying, Machine says, is Meta making excuses that he's gonna lose?
I mean, you guys are defining L4 as 0 disengagements. That is not what L4 is. So I would argue you're moving the goalpost. Like, how about we look up the definition and read it?
Omar,
What are you guys talking about?
Meta says we're gonna have L4 by next month.
I did not say next month. You said next month. May is
Next
not
3
next
months.
month.
I mean, Yeah, I think some of Tesla's critics have said that it's basically an L4 intent system. But obviously, when we talk about L2, I think what people really mean is, do I have to supervise the system? And, I think it's an L4 capable system. Like, you could turn off the nag and driver monitoring system and just have it drive around, and it would probably be able to complete a lot of trips successfully. But it would also crash sometimes. And, Waymo's L4 and they crash sometimes. And that doesn't mean they're not level 4. Able to complete a lot of trips successfully, but it would also crash sometimes. And, Waymo's L4 and they crash sometimes. And that doesn't mean they're not level 4. But I think when can we say FSD beta is really functioning as an L4 system rather than just the driver monitoring? Like, you could say, okay, they're already L4, and that's true to some extent. But I think when most people talk about reaching L4, they're really talking about the need to supervise being removed.
Then what's the difference between L4 and L5?
Well, I mean, the SA levels are kind of stupid. They're not really my preferred measure of progress, but I think the official definition would just be that L4 is more constrained to certain operating conditions, whereas L5 has, a broader range of operating conditions, weather, geofence, whatever.
So here's the argument I would make. If you can have a remotely operated intervention as part of L4, the core requirement is you have a certain amount of time that you have to give for a human to be able to intervene and react and take over. If that same is applied to the person in the vehicle, how is that not L4?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit just of a pedantic discussion, for the purpose of trying to figure out this bet. But I don't really worry about what the difference between level 4 and level 5 and level 3 is. I just say, supervised or driverless. So right now we're supervised, but you know, we're trending quickly towards not needing to be supervised. Video game. It's designed to be an L4 system and to be used in that way at some point, but the SAE levels really just refer to the user interface of the system. A lot of people think, okay, they're a quality measurement, or you got a grade of 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. That's not really what it is at all. It's just describing the UI. So if the UI involves you supervising it and it's monitoring your attention, we call that level 2. So you could take a Waymo and you could run it in level 2 mode if you had a nag and had a driver monitoring system. And similarly, you could take FSD beta and run it in an L2 mode or an L4 mode, but it's only available in a level 2 UI right now. Now, at some point, they'll make it available in a level 4 UI, either because the software is much better or they've constrained the environment or something like that. But we'll know it when we see it. People taking naps, sleeping, sitting in the back seat. And the system is actually capable of this today. Like, you've seen guys like Lavish P go and take these rides and sit in the back seat and get arrested for it. But when you can do that without getting arrested, then we'll know that we've made it.
I think the next time we have a lawyer on the speaker board, we should have them read the difference between 3, 4, and 5, because everything is being conflated. It's not just about the UI. There's actually a description between what these things mean. And to say it's silly but not know what it is seems silly to me.
Yeah, like I said, it's a little bit of an overly pedantic discussion. It sounds like you guys are trying to establish whether a bet was won or lost or something like that. But, is there someone sitting in the driver's seat or is there not? I think that's just kind of the distinction.
What
It's
if
actually, pretty simple. You don't really need to get into like definitions or anything. It's just kind of like, okay, there's someone sitting there.
Yeah.
Now,
What if you're
you know, we're
required to sit in the driver's seat, but you're given a certain amount of time, like 10-second warning or 15-second warning or 30-second warning before you have to take over? And it doesn't get into accidents because it's safe. It pulls over safely. Could be awkward, but just like the Waymos and the Cruises would stop in the middle of the road, it is awkward. People will honk. It's not unsafe, but the person behind the wheel has to take over because they're given a 10-second warning to take over and be like, hey, we need to start driving. That is L4.
yeah, I mean, you know, if actually smart someone is driving around in a parking lot, is that L4 without a driver? Maybe you could consider it is. But mostly arguing about whether it is or what level it is kind of a waste of time. I think when you have a system where even if it has to ask you to take over, even if you have to be there and it can give you 30 seconds to take over or whatever, that's still supervised. The human is still required. So when no humans required, you can sit in the back. That's really the chasm that we have to cross. And all this work that they've been doing for years, all these billions they've been investing are all adding up to this. And you just don't see it. You don't see it. Nothing's happening until suddenly everything is happening. And at that point, it'll be too late. It'll be too late to
Machine
invest. Yeah.
Machine is in the live chat of YouTube responding, and he says, Meta is a charlatan, totally changing the conversation from a year ago. The intent of the discussion was always that the car could essentially drive itself without the human paying attention or even needing to be in the driver's seat. Didn't distinguish between L4, L5 because worried about geographic ODD. Meta?
Well, this is why there was a lot of other words placed into that bet. So I lament being called a charlatan when
Dude,
specifically
your entire thing was
my
regulatory.
sentence.
No, your entire thing was regulatory approval. Okay,
No, it was
you
not.
thought you yes, it was.
It
You
was
thought
L4, not
no.
L5. It was
You thought
not in parking
that
lots, curb to curb.
technology. No, you thought that the technology would be so good that you could sleep in it
I did not
illegally.
say that. I
You could sleep
specifically
in it
said you could not
no
sleep in it because that's what the
legally.
non-regulatory part is.
You
Okay, here,
you
if I
didn't
say
want to
tomorrow, you
stop.
can sit in the car on your phone.
Sorry, I have to mute you. The fact is, I'm going to mute everyone. The fact is, you thought that the technology would get so good that you could illegally sleep in it, but you did not want to take a stance on the regulatory approval process. That was the whole thing. Software is clearly is not there. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm going to talk and you're just going to mute me again, but if you're in the car and you can be on your phone the whole time and you're given a 10-second warning, and during this 10-second, after that 10-second warning, you have to take over, drive it around a situation it doesn't understand, you think that's not going to drive sales? You think that's not achieving a big milestone? If so, then you know what? It will never reach L5 because L5, as you define it, is 0 disengagements. Make the mileage large enough, make the area covered large enough, make the number of vehicles large enough, you will never hit that goal. That is a silly goal to aim for. The goal should be, when is the moment at which we know this can compete with Waymo?
Machine.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Meta, can you hear Machine? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. It's not working. Where 6 can yeah, I'm the only person who can hear you. It really is. But hold on one second. Just wait right there, Machine. Wait right there. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. It's not working. Where 6 can yeah, I'm the only person who can hear you. It really is. But hold on one second. Just wait right there, Machine. Wait right there. um, yeah. I mean, look at this. Like, I just re-logged in and entered the space through my macro analyst account, which is the one that's streaming. And I don't even see Machine as a speaker on the macro analyst accounts. I don't even see him in the space. It's so weird. But here, I can hear him on my phone. I can hear him. Dunstan. It's so stupid. But anyway, machine says you're making a straw man argument, and I agree.
And this is for what it's worth. A year ago, when you said you have to stick your neck out and you have to make a bet, this is why I didn't want to do it.
No. Oh my
It's
god.
not 100% the
can't-
case. There's
I
like
can't believe it.
let's talk about the technical sides of things, and then let's ignore the technical definitions. This is what we're doing right now.
Dude, your entire thing was you thought that the software was so good. The software, you said, I'm a technology guy. I'm a technology. I don't want to make a prediction on regulatory. That technology would be so good that people would be able to sleep. They would essentially be a robot taxi that would drive you around, good chauffeur and everything, would drive you around anywhere and all that. You just didn't want to make a call on the regulatory stuff.
And that's why I put in parking lot restrictions, because I didn't want to make a call on regulatory stuff. And that's why I said L4, not L5, because I want to make a call on regulatory stuff. Go find the video or the audio. Like, I think your memory has been corrupted somehow.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm wrong. Omar is wrong. Machine is wrong. You're the only one remembering correctly.
Omar didn't make a comment about the bet itself. He said it's just a silly thing to discuss.
Machine. I can't hear him. It's so fucking weird. I see him as a listener. I can't hear him, but you guys can't see him. It's ridiculous. Anyway, all right.
I agree with Omar. This is a ridiculous thing to discuss. I think you guys want to say you won. Go ahead.
What do you want to? What do you want
I
to
will back off.
predict? What do you
I will
want to
back off.
predict for May? What do you want to predict for May?
I want to make 0 predictions going forward, because
right.
the definitions keep
So
changing.
you don't. So okay, how do you want to define it? Where do you think the software is going to be in May?
All I'm going to say is I believe the software is closer to where I thought it was going to be than where people thought it was going to be a year ago. I'm happy with where the software is. I think they'll continue to make progress and they will achieve their objective at some point. That is all we need
Where
to
do you
say
think is going to be in May?
about this.
Where do you think FSD will be in May?
Better than it is today. This is the quality
You're so
conversation
funny.
that we are limited
This
to
is
at this
yeah.
point.
This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I can't believe you're claiming. Like right now, you should be on the speaker board apologizing, not claiming victory.
I came here on September 27th, on the very day that I got the previous thing wrong. I will have that conversation on May 15th if I believe I'm wrong.
Okay. All right. Wessex. What do you want to talk about?
Man, I don't know. I could go a lot of different directions. I guess, just for me, the allowing shareholders to jump in, ahead in line for the Cyberbees is or for Cybertruck's pretty interesting, because, maybe there was a little bit of pressure with celebrities getting their hands on Cybertrucks early. I've seen a lot of people, express some frustration about that. So I don't know if the shareholder move is like a reaction, but I think it's a good move.
I think generally saying that because somebody's sitting at a computer and they hit a button a few milliseconds before someone else, they should get their car first doesn't make sense. So I think that expectation is more about how other queues work. And this could set a good precedent to say, we're going to prioritize differently. I think Ferrari and Enzo did the same thing, right? Like the more vehicles you've owned in the past, the more likely you are to get it. There's all these different ways they could decide how they want to distribute the vehicles.
Machine says you've achieved Donald Trump level denial.
Coming from Machine, I assume that's a compliment.
All right. What is the AI paper that you were talking about that you sent to the speaker group that you believe will lead to a, orders of magnitude improvement in efficiency for training chips and inference chips? Can you summarize that paper for us?
Yeah, so that's called, there's a whole bunch of papers in the same space, but it's called Mixture of Experts. That particular paper has a graph. That was the reason why I sent it. And it shows sublinear growth in the parameter count as they scale. Or if it's sublinear, if it's logarithmic, for example, that means you can continue to throw more and more tokens at the problem. So you turn it into a data problem. as opposed to a space problem, which limits you physically on chips.
Can you tell us more?
Sure. Um, how do we go about this? So parameters at some point have to show up in your SRAM on your chip somewhere, because you kind of have to have the chip keep in mind all the different parameters and all the functions that you need to apply to the net as data flows from input to the output layers. So your chips are kind of limited in that sense, right? There's more that goes into this than just the memory, but that is one limiting factor. The more parameters you throw at something, the more possible it is for you to discover distant connections or various other things. These are like basically a proxy for how close neurons are to each other, how long they are, how strongly they are connected to each other, and so on and so forth, right? That would be so if you have a harder and harder problem you're trying to solve, you might need to throw more and more neurons at it, or more and more neuron connections. That's one way to solve it. The other way to solve it is to say, I'm going to have the same fixed size brain, so it's the same set of neurons, and I'm just going to throw more and more data at it and more experience at it. And what the chinchilla paper was showing was, in a single model, you were getting to a limiting factor where you had to send it 10 times more just to get a doubling of quality improvement. And then you had to send another 10 times more to get another doubling. So this was not going to scale. And so this is a big problem. What Mixture of Experts allows you to do is to say, we're going to create a frontal cortex and a cerebral cortex and an auditory cortex. And so all these different parts of the brain that do different specializations can now be trained in that's not in the paper that I sent, but like through multitask training. So you could actually have each of those little cortexes trained on their own. You can recombine them, and you can have the whole system as a whole outperform another model that would have, if you had just done it all in one model, you would have had to have a lot more parameters. This is basically a way you can also distribute the load across different chipsets. There's a lot of various other benefits that come from this, but this shows you how you can see large reductions in the demand for the hardware itself.
When do you think this will become a reality? Like, when do you think we're going to start seeing this in the order rates for the chips?
That's harder to say because the order rates are driven by many things, not just this, but there are already many papers, like Mixtral came out with one. There's Gemini has come out with one. There's a bunch of different papers that are showing this. And I would say all the papers you're seeing that have crazy, crazy high attention and retention, I believe that they're using this plus ring attention. So that's another approach, but it's enabled more when you don't have to worry about the parameter count.
Six.
Yeah, it's a question for Meta. What is the origin of tokens? I've been in the software space working with software developers. I'm not one, but I've been working with them for large projects, for 20 something years. And tokens are new to me. Is this an AI phenomenon? Is this an API unit of measurement? Can you just shed some light on that?
Sure. Tokens have always existed in like compiler world, right? So this is just where it came from. You can think of like tokens are more efficient definitions for characters, if you will. If you were defining the English language today and you were an engineer, you might not use the same 26 letters that we use today, because oftentimes like the letter Q is followed by the letter U. Why not just make that one character? The letter E is often followed by the letter R, or the R is followed by E. Why not make those a single character? If you did this, you could increase the number of characters in your alphabet by a lot, right? But now, whenever you read something, you can read it much faster because you're reading many characters at the same time. So that's kind of like where the idea of tokenization comes from. And then what happens with AI is you start realizing I don't need to read each letter if it doesn't influence my understanding. So maybe I just need to read words at a time. But sometimes you need to read subsets of the word, like ing or ed at the end of the word will change the meaning of the word. So that's what tokenization kind of is doing, is it's pulling out the biggest chunk it can without changing the meaning of the sentence for each chunk that it's reading. There's different tokenization strategies as well.
Man, that's a great explanation. So generally, though, it's optimization, for processing.
Correct. Yeah.
method?
So what you do is you map each of these tokens to a number. And if you had done letters, you would have to map each of the letters to a number, right? And when you send all these numbers into the AI model, what you're doing is you're sending each of these to one neuron on the input layer. So the more dense you can make the data inside your tokens, the less tokens it takes to read more words. Today, it's at about 75% with most tokenization schemes, most of the popular ones, 75% of a word. So most words are about I can't do the inverse in my head right now. 1.3, about 1.3 tokens. Obviously, bigger words are going to have more tokens. There's some words where like, I don't know, individual things will change. Languages will have an impact on this. Obviously, Mandarin is going to be very different than English. In which case, you might even like break a word up by like looking at strokes separately. So it gets more complicated. I'm definitely hand waving over a lot of stuff here, but that's kind of like what the point of tokenization is to reduce the amount of individual neurons necessary in the input layer to cover the same amount of text.
And is there a cost or a fee charged, from let's say OpenAI and stuff for these tokens for usage, if you will?
CPUs do the tokenization, so that's probably not something they care too much about.
Great, thanks.
With NVIDIA and other AI stocks surging again today, are you looking into selling some calls or buying puts or shorting?
I think I did sell some stuff already. I think I'm just gonna wait and see. Like I said earlier, there's a big difference in between maybe knowing where the technology is going and being able to forecast the timing and forecast the stock market are totally different skills on top of that.
Well, if this paper that you just discussed reduces demand for the chips by an order of 2 orders of magnitude, then the stocks are going to plunge 50,
Not
60,
true.
70, 80%. Why
Now,
not?
if I were to channel West, I would say, what if you do see a 2 orders of magnitude reduction in chip demand per model, but you see 3 orders of magnitude increase in application?
Do you think there's going to be 1,000 times increase in AI applications in the next 12 months?
I personally don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, first of all, there's really like, do you think ChatGPT is profitable today?
No,
Like, it's not even close, right?
no, I would be shocked. I think the last we heard was Sam Altman saying they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars a month.
Do you think any large language model is profitable today?
The open source ones probably are. Actually, no, I take that back because they had to spend all the money on doing it. They don't have a profit revenue for it. It's hard to say. There could be some stuff out there that's very domain specific, like Firefly for Adobe might be.
Yeah. So I just don't see a surge in unprofitable AI applications in the next 12 months with the interest rates where they are.
So
It's a very different environment than a few years ago.
there are a lot of large AI applications out there that have been profitable
Hold
for
on, I can't hear you. I'll be right back.
Hey, while he's doing that, Meta, are you in the AI space yourself?
Yes. I'm definitely in the AI space. That's why I have this stuff in memory, and that's why I probably am wrong sometimes, because there's a big difference between theory and practice sometimes.
Yaman, are you back? I want to ask
Yeah,
Meta
I'm
another
back.
question.
Go ahead.
So, Meta,
Yeah.
I've been in the recruiting world for my entire career. I'm curious how many AI professionals you might think are out there right now, and maybe define what AI professional is, because there's a lot of people that are calling themselves an AI engineer, but they're really prompt engineers. They're not writing any code. Some may perceive that as, I don't know, a little bit more complicated than I think it might be. But can you give any sense to what you think the current talent pool looks like?
I'm going to sound very elitist if I answer your question, so I kind of want to opt out because I think I probably already come off elitist sometimes.
No, well, I think it's in a very narrow group. I mean, I think there's so few.
Yeah, easily
So
less than 10,000. Easily less than 10,000.
for sure, I was thinking maybe thousands, if not hundreds, but depending how you define it. So could you kind of maybe define the top tier then, or
So
how would,
there's different aspects in AI engineering, right? There's folks who do labeling, right? So that'll be probably more on the data side of things. That does take a skill set. There's a lot of requirement there. They're working with stuff. Then there's people who are doing academic research. That's like new models, new approaches, stuff like that. That's a very small group, right? That's probably on the order of thousands, maybe 3 to 5,000 tops. These are people in universities. These are people working on, at OpenAI, DeepMind, that kind of stuff, where it's like innovating leading edge research. Then you've got your uh, people working in compilers for AI. Then you got your people working on the hardware for AI. Then you got your people working in fine tuning models that have already been built. Like, so the foundational models are coming from the research academics, and then the fine tuning is occurring by application stuff. And that was pretty much the bulk of AI engineering in the past. And academic was considered like a unnecessary waste of money until people saw, oh wow, that actually could move the needle a lot. And then after that, you have people who don't even fine tune. They don't even do anything else, but they're building APIs on top of it. Like they're building the apps that, like, people go in and they use it as kind of just like an interface and a UI over another AI. But under the hood, they're still doing a lot of like few shot learning and things like that to try and basically massage the prompts to do what you want them to do under the hood.
well, I asked this question because, back,
Shot learning and things like that to try and basically massage the prompts to do what you want them to do under the hood.
well, I asked this question because, back to Yaman's question about cost, who's part of my question. But I guess lastly, back to the prompt engineering, do you consider that to be kind of like a low skill, not a big deal kind of thing? Or do you really feel that prompt engineers are a, kind of not top tier, but, kind of on the high end of the tiers, if you will, in the AI space?
Hard for me to say that subjectively. I think it's a fast evolving space, and you can argue. There's these papers out there. Can't remember exactly all of their names right now, but there's a field called aping, automatic prompt engineering. There's auto prompt. There's a whole bunch of other ones in this space. I don't think the terminology that's going to settle has necessarily been decided yet. That's how nascent it is. But effectively, you have these prompt engineers sit there and come up with a better way to ask a question. Well, you can ask the model to come up with better ways to ask questions. So, like even Andre Kripathi has a great video on how to use how to build something called Make More. You do that in your computer science classes pretty early on. You can do that with like a Markov chain, which is like the dumbest debatable if it's AI or statistical machine models. But you can do really, really good make more stuff with OpenAI, with DeepMind, all these kinds of things. So eventually, as much as like, AI is disrupting different jobs, prompt engineering might be one of those jobs that gets disrupted first because it's almost a bug of the system not understanding what you actually wanted under the hood. You can kind of see this already where like different models have released the ability to say, generate code, run and execute the code, and then give you the answer back. That's effectively prompt engineering, right? It's engineering a shell script to runs the shell script, gives you the answer. This is a good way to have humans with a calculator, which is more powerful than a human without a calculator, because calculators are really good at procedural stuff. Humans tend not to be good at that. So as we're building not heuristic like C++, but sometimes you call neural nets heuristic machines. As you're building these neural nets, you are hurting yourself if you don't also pair them with a computational machine.
Interesting. Ed, being a professional in AI, have you seen any specialized AI recruiting companies reach out to you directly?
I'm going to pass on that question, but yes, there are many that hit people up on LinkedIn all the time.
And there's like niche AI.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't know if you said this a moment ago, but can you explain what you do, what you're, concisely, if you like, just what you do in AI?
My role has changed recently, so I'm not going to go into exactly what I do currently, but my primary focus has been in model size reduction and speeding up the speed at which models are released.
I've got a job for you. And no, I'm kidding. Great. Thank you.
To answer your earlier question, Yaman, there are many companies out there that run large scale AI systems, right? Like you think of on the iPhone, you click the I button and it tells you what's in the photo. Google Photos has similar features. The search engines, autocompletes, all these kinds of things are, well, maybe not autocompletes, that's more statistical, but a lot of these features are already large AI systems that exist, and many of them are already very profitable. So there is definitely a way for AI to be profitable. And in all the different like things I described right now about where money is being made, foundational models is really where people are losing money. Oh, and I also have to run. So thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to end the space. Wes, anything on your side?
Nothing I can think of at the moment.
All right. Well then, thank you very much, everybody. And I will talk to you next time.
Thanks for having me up.